In this next session, we are going to be evaluating resources and claims for validity, and we will be starting at the very young level of grades K to 2, even though you'll be able to applicably move this up to any grade level or age level. I will show you an entry point that young learners can enter into this same learning style too. So today our learning objective is educators, you will be able to use Gemini to design fact sorting and source evaluation activities to simplify complex information literacy concepts while increasing engagement with your students. So we know that in grades K to 2, and of course in all grades, information literacy isn't about teaching kids how to use a database. It's about helping them wonder, how do we know it's true? And who told us that? In today's session, we're going to explore how Gemini can support you in making these abstract concepts concrete for our little learners. We want our students to be curious but critical, and information literacy is the superpower we need to give them to navigate a world full of media with confidence and clarity, as tricky as it may be. Gemini isn't here to replace your teaching, of course. It's a tool to help you create materials that meets students exactly where they are. It's important to be able to differentiate and recognize those students in your rooms and give examples that are applicable to them in their learning and environment. So based on foundational literacy, we need to kind of look at the concepts that include the difference between fact and opinion, so your students can understand, like, I love pizza is different than pizza has cheese. Another important concept for our young learners is recognizing that information comes from a person or a place, and the importance to identify that source becomes more about those people and who they are and what their background is and what that source means, and around specific topics. For example, a veterinarian is better source for dog advice than a person who just likes puppies. Creating activities to teach your class about these two concepts is a large time investment, of course, but this is how Gemini can be particularly useful. It can generate a range of different fact versus opinion and source scenarios for your students to practice in just less than a minute. So I want you to think ahead. What's one specific topic you're going to be teaching? And by the end of the session, you'll have a resource that helps your students ask, where did this information come from? So we're going to do a little bit of a demo here, and we're going to start off basic and moving it forward. So the first kind of activity is like, who do we trust? We want our students to understand that an expert is more a reliable source for facts than just a hobbyist as we go. So I'm going to be going to gemini.google.com, and I'm going to put in a prompt, again starting at the basic entry point. We're going to look at how we can scaffold the information as we go forward with this. So I'm going to tell Gemini exactly what my students need. So I'll paste the following prompt into the prompt bar, and we'll go from there and iterate it. So the example is grade 1, 2 very short about the author blurbs, 2 sentences each for a book about bees. Author 1 is a scientist who studies insects in a lab, and author 2 is a person who likes the color yellow and eats honey on their toast. So we want to write up a follow-up question. If we want to know how a bee makes honey, which person is the best source to ask? So in that terms of that, we could have a conversation, of course, with our students, and but in this case, I want to show you how we would continue to build and scaffold off of that. So here's the prompt. I just went here into Google Gemini, gemini.google.com, and click New Chat. I haven't changed any of the settings, and I'm just going to hit Submit. All right, so it does ask the question, if we want to know how a bee makes honey, which person is better source to ask? And I think whether we have this, it's a good starting point for conversation, but I might want to ask it, okay, can you make this into a game with more examples? And it's going to give me a text-based question here, which I could copy and paste into a different platform, Google Slides or anything, or a doc. But here's round 1. A scientist who studies tiny insects in a lab. She uses big magnifying glasses to learn how bees live and work. Author 2, the question is, who's the best person to ask, how do bees make honey? Who would you ask? Author 1 or author 2, Dr. Bug or Sam? So these are different scenario type questions that you could use when you are working with your student. Again, the platform, this is just the text-based opportunity. So I'm going to move forward a little bit because we're reviewing the output and we're definitely trying to get these comparisons in what we want to look at. And so we're going in, and here's just kind of another example of what Gemini's done and what I just showed you. Author A, author B, which person's the best one to ask? I gave it a scaffold about that sort of further game questions. So I'm going to give you another demo. In this case, it's going to be about 5 facts and 5 opinions about owls written at a 2nd grade level that will have students practice identifying what can be proven. So we're going to go back to Gemini. I'm going to click on New Chat. And then I'm going to put in the following prompt that we just kind of identified about owls. I've said 5 facts and opinions, grade 2 reading level, that will help identify what can be proven, explain what a source is using an analogy that a 2nd grade student would understand, and focus on the idea that information has to come from somewhere. So I'm just putting this in here right now. And of course, if it's too complex, I don't have to start over. I can always just change the type of output, like make it simpler for that. But here are 5 facts about owls and 5 opinions about owls. And then here's a source, like the water pitcher analogy. Imagine you want a cold glass of water. When you pour water into your cup, where did that water come from? It came from the pitcher, but the pitcher is the source of the water. Information works in that same way. So is that actually the source of water? I could probably ask this to unpack it a little bit more because the water came from the pitcher, but where did the water come from? So it opens up a conversation point is what our point is. But I do want to say, okay, we do have these 5 facts and 5 opinions. What could I do with it? I could just say it out loud in different orders with my students, but I'm going to introduce a little bonus activity here, and I'm going to click on the plus button here at the bottom, and I'm going to open up Canvas. This will be shown in different iterations of the Google AI Educator series, but I want to see what I could do here. So I flipped it to Canvas, and I'm going to ask, can you create a fact or opinion game using the examples above? So what it's going to do, it's going to start creating an interactive game through code, but the output is just an interactive game that you could use immediately, almost immediately. You can see that it's working on it right now as I'm talking. It sometimes takes a minute or two, but what it's allowing me to do is in a preview or code mode and being able to save it in your Google Drive or different outputs. So Canvas is a great tool to create interactive, or even the next example would be, can you create Google Slides with this information? And it will start with that Google Slides presentation here in Canvas. So we'll give it a moment, and we'll be able to see some of these key game features. 10 question decks you can see us pulling up, and right off the bat we do have code on the left hand side, so we don't need to know this, but it's cool to look at how it's created. But we have this preview. Are you a fact detective? You know, here's what fact is, here's what an opinion is. I'm going to start the game. Owls are birds. Is that a fact or opinion? Well, if I do fact, yeah, great. Definitely moving it forward. What does it look like? Next clue. Owls are the coolest birds in the forest. Well, opinion, and you can go through. So I love that example. You can show the console, you can download it, and you can share directly to it. So if you wanted students to look at it, but in this example, I'm more imagining this is up projected on a screen and you're leading a class discussion. And even if some student can come up and can hit the answer on behalf of that, that is kind of what we're going for here. And then I'm going to give it one more prompt on the left hand side. I'm going to say, amazing, can you make this into a Google Slides presentation with visuals? So it's great that we had all those questions, but what does it mean to do to help me in the moment, saying I would like to have an output that actually I could go leave the staff room or leave my prep time and be able to have something concrete in the moment as you want to determine something. So you can see it's creating the slides on owl, fact, or opinion detective, and we'll give it a few more moments to populate. But when it takes this amount of time, that's actually a really good sign because it is working. When it is digging down through creation and generation, it will take a lot of those moments to be able to look at it. So your slide deck right here, as we're talking, is being created. And as I go through it, the mission, what is a fact? And you can go through, a fact is a truth, 3 owl facts, 2 more facts, and you can see sometimes the images may or may not turn, and when we export it we will be able to add or change images because options at the top are in PDF in PowerPoint, but great option right here of course is opening this up in Google Slides where you can edit the text, or you can add or edit the images that are there as we go through. So such a neat opportunity for you to use as you are within here. So this was, again, at the very bottom of my original chat. I just clicked on the plus button and I switched it over to Canvas as opposed to, this is not Canva, this is Canvas within Google Gemini. And I was able to use some of these tools that I wanted to dig in further. So that's a neat piece that hopefully you can find beneficial for you, and we will revisit throughout the series. Now it's time for you to practice. So in a few moments after I explain, you can pause the video here and take as much time as you want. But in the same way we just showed you and modeled, please put in there, give me 5 facts and 5 opinions about whatever topic. Again, if you're teaching in grade 8 or 10 or 5 or 6, you can certainly put in at the topic written at that grade level and use the prompt. This will help my students practice identifying what can be proven. Explain what a source is using an analogy at that grade. And then of course, as you go through, number 4 is just more about evaluating it. There's not an action other than using your critical thinking. And number 5, you can change it up or change the grade level of text down. And then bonus, if you want to level it up, you can make sure to click that plus button, choose Canvas, and then ask it to make it into slides or an interactive game. So I will give you a few moments. You can pause it, and when you are ready, you can unpause it, and we will continue. Okay, well, hopefully you had a great time being able to tinker around with those digital literacy lessons within your chosen subject and topic and grade level. So where are we at with this? Well, I just really want to reflect, well, what did you change so that it would make sense for you and your students, and what did you kind of innovate with in terms of an output of a media source? Just the conversation starter around this, being fact or fiction, is just going to be able to, or opinion, is going to be able to support you with your students as you become critical thinkers with information that is found in real life, but also on the internet and through AI. So we would love you to be able to continue your learning journey and use this aspect to be able to gain some badgifications for you. Again, Logix is your tutor through this whole process, and we want you to be able to get all these badges to show your great learning. And right here on the screen, what I did is I went to goo.gle/GES5, the Google Educator Series 5, and what pops up is this unit. You can click Start Learning, which will reinforce the information I have brought to you today. And then you can click on Earn Badge, which will bring up the option for some multiple choice, typically around 4 or 5 questions, to be able to get your badge on evaluating resources and claims. As always, we appreciate and wish for your feedback, constructive and just positive. We want to continue to grow to support you as learners in these areas, so please either scan the QR code or use that link or the ones found in your registration and the site in which this is held. We can't thank you enough for this opportunity, and we look forward to continuing to work with you further soon.